All right. So this is a fun session. I have known Cole for a very long time. I don't know if you remember the first time you came into my office. The Missouri Film Office was on campus at the University of Missouri, and my office was an old dorm room, I think, at one point. And so Cole came in, and I'm from Russellville, Missouri, and I had no idea where that was. And then we started talking, and you knew your stuff, and you were scrappy, and I knew you were going places back then. That was a long time ago. So, and you've been a great asset representing Missouri out in Los Angeles and at Sundance and all of the places that you have had films. And I'm happy to count you as a friend also, and I've learned a lot from you. And today you're going to share your experiences and help the other folks learn a little bit more about the industry. So first, let's talk a little bit about your career path. So you started out in Russellville, Missouri, which is right near Jefferson City.
Yeah. Um, well, I guess like when I was still in Russellville, I never thought the actual film industry was a career path, yes, we're 15 minutes from Jefferson City, so it's not like we're completely secluded from stores and things like that. But, being from a town of like 800 people, it just didn't seem like a reality. But I did always love movies, and, would sit if Star Wars was on ABC or whatever back to back on a Saturday, I would sit there and watch all three commercials included. So that would be like my whole day kind of thing as a kid. But I started having field parties actually. Yeah, my grandfather's a farmer out here and he has a bunch of land. And instead of just parties though, it got to where I was like setting up stages and lights and like having to build like certain walls and barricades and so I was like sort of into like producing events before I even realized that to me I was just having a party, but it was just trying to like, to me I was like, I'm trying to have the biggest party possible and the best party possible. And it's like it started when there was probably like 100 people when I was like 15 and had my first party, cut to like 2,000 people when I was like 19.
What?
And people were coming from all over the state, and even remember meeting some people from out of state. And that was back before cell phones or social media, so it was just all pure word of mouth. So it's just, so that's also, it was an exercise in marketing too, grassroots sort of marketing, again before I even knew those terms or what those things were. So a couple of buddies of mine from Jefferson City, they went to Helias, two cousins, Jeremy Lathan and Kyle Lathan, had decided they were moving to Los Angeles to pursue careers in the film industry. So I said, I'll ride along, and I did, and I stayed for like a week in LA, and I was like, I need to get out here, so and then a little bit later, I ended up moving to Los Angeles, and after being in LA for a month or so, um, with Kyle Lathan, we went down to a bar in Venice Beach, and he introduced me. He was pursuing acting and modeling and stuff like that, and he'd gotten a manager, and he introduced me to her, or he'd met her like delivering food to her when he was pursuing a manager or something. She ended up managing him at one point. I can't remember if it was at that point or not, but so we went to meet her for a drink, and she's like, what do you do, kind of the LA question. I just said I just moved here from Missouri. I ended up majoring in entertainment management down in Springfield, because I just had to choose a major, and I was like, oh, I like to throw parties, entertainment management, let's do that. So she had a talent management company, and she said, do you want to intern for me? And I said, sure. And I showed up on Monday, and I was very clueless about the business. I had no actual like film production experience. Like I didn't take any of those classes in college or anything like that. And I mean, I think one of the first questions she asked me was like, do you read Hollywood Reporter and Variety? And I didn't even know what those things were at the time. So, I mean, that's just how green I was when I started. It was just literally loved movies. And I think, my Missouri work ethic of just working hard and sticking with it is kind of what got me through. I mean, there may have been an easier path, because I think I interned for free working about 60 hours a week for like 6 to 8 months or something like that. And then when my boss finally did start paying me, it was $1,250 a month. And this is even in Los Angeles in 2003 and 4, that is nothing. And it was plus commission, and somehow I kind of always never got the commission because the actors weren't paying us commission on that or whatever it was. We were predominantly managing actors, a couple writers. So it was, I never got above and beyond the $1,250 a month, besides like maybe some free lunches and a little gas money every once in a while. But so but I also, it was a thrown into the fire experience, but it was a good experience. I'm glad that I did it, because I got the nice thing about it, it was a smaller company. And because of the situation, I got to experience a little bit of everything. I was literally running to get this woman coffee at Starbucks from like running her company if she was like sick, and she had optioned the rights to a book that she had attached Jennifer Lynch to adapt and to direct into a feature. And so that was my first sort of experience into the producing world. And then she started dating her now husband, who ended up moving in while I was working there because we were working out of her house. He was a writer and producer, and at the time he had that Rome series on HBO. So I was kind of working with him as well. So, and again, it was just a little everything: talent management, producing, script development, and things like that. So, when I got tired of the things like go run and get me coffee or go help my boyfriend move out of his storage unit for the fourth or fifth time in 1 month, I said, I'm not a mover. And said, if you don't like it, you can leave. So I did. And I went around and I met people that I'd met in the business. And I just said, I'm really interested in pursuing producing. I think I'm not looking for a handout from anybody, but I think I can be helpful. And the first meeting I took, I got handed a script called Downloading Nancy, which I ended up producing. Now, that was not the first movie I produced, but like at the time, it was sort of like we had Holly Hunter, William Hurt, Stellan Skarsgård, Radha Mitchell, all attached. And it was like, we need $300,000 and we're filming in like a month or two, something like that. So I went out and I talked to a buddy of mine who owned a sushi restaurant that I'd met out in LA, and I got him to commit to $100,000. So then I was in, like on the executive producer side. Then other money fell out, actors' availability changed. We ended up completely recasting the whole thing. But what was nice is the director stuck through, and so about 4 years later, I think, is when I ended up actually producing that film and bringing the majority of the financing to the table. And that was just through LA friends that I'd met. Like the sushi restaurant friend ended up backing out in the end, but another friend who owns some like bars and restaurants in Los Angeles and Hollywood, he ended up, his family ended up bringing the bulk of the equity financing to that film. So I ended up bringing in over $1 million
Wow.
equity to that film. But again, that was 4 years later, but the director was Johan Rank. Johan, his most recent big thing was the Chernobyl series on HBO. He directed all of that. So that was a really great experience working with Johan. I mean, that was his first feature, and he hadn't even done television at that point because he's done a lot of big television as well. Everything from like Bloodline and like Breaking Bad and stuff like that, but he was a really big music video and commercial director, like Madonna music videos, Robbie Williams, things like that. And Christopher Doyle was our director of photography. And am I getting too?
I was going to say, yeah,
let's myself.
Yeah,
here,
You're getting into the nitty gritty, which is good, and we're going to get to that part on the distribution side. But so what
signed up for this to talk about?
Talk about just starting your company, like so when you went out on your own. Talk about that. Right.
Well, just to touch on distribution, since I'm talking about the Downloading Nancy film, because I think this is important. This film ended up getting accepted to the Sundance Film Festival in 2008. And so, as most young filmmakers think, I was like, amazing, I've made it. My movie's in Sundance. It's going to sell for millions of dollars. We're going to win an Oscar. And, there's my career. And unfortunately, that didn't happen. And it doesn't happen a lot of the times like that. And that's the stories that, you don't really get told about a lot, because there's all the things that go into like making the movie and making your decisions with distribution. that affect that. And so essentially, we ended up we got a $60,000 advance for North American distribution rights. It was right when things were changing in the distribution landscape, when day and date releases started. For those of you who may not know, day and date just means like it's playing a handful of theaters at the same time it comes out on video on demand. And you can also say day and date with VOD and DVD and things like that. But it just means that two areas are being released at the same time. And that was before they really had day and date figured out. And I guess you could say they have it figured out
Still
now.
haven't, no.
Yeah, but they have maybe more figured out. But it's like things like, like for instance, just quick sidebar, a movie that I made before I ended up making Downloading Nancy was like a friends and family movie that we put together like $100,000, just, getting $1,000 here, $5,000 there. And we ended up like collectively getting $100,000, and all just like, because we were like 20s going out in LA and stuff, so we knew the club owners and bar people and stuff like that. So it's like we were getting in some of these like Hollywood clubs for free and things like that to film. We had no permits, we were filming it like along the La Brea tar pits, and I think that was the only time one of the two only times we only got hassled. But we had like no permits, I don't think we had insurance. It was just, we hired our equipment, like a guy drove from Arizona off Craigslist because he wanted a gaffer credit. But anyways, so I ended up, and of course we had high hopes. We're like, we made this for $100,000. We've got Jason Mewes and Simon Rex and Andy Milonakis at the time, when he was at like the height of his fame, and these people. And it was just like, we're gonna be in studios, we're gonna make, or at least we're gonna make a lot of money. We made this movie for nothing. And that just wasn't the case. Again, distribution landscape was changing. You realize how much competition is out there, and it's just more and more every day, because you can shoot films on your iPhone today, that look great, probably look better than that $100,000 movie I made in whenever that was, 2006. So, at the time though, back then, that was 2008 2009 area, and that's when they were releasing DVD before movies went to video on demand. And I basically pitched, without knowing it was a day and date release, because I had gotten a digital distribution, video on demand, through Gravitas Ventures, who were one of the first guys in the game to release independent movies straight to video on demand. So I had the deal with them set up. That was before now today they're a full-on distributor, theatrical, everything. But then they were straight video on demand for independent films, and they were the first guys in the game to do that. And their output deal was through Warner Brothers, so they had a very wide reach. So you were out there amongst, and at that time it was just mainly cable video on demand, so it's like you're scrolling down a list that's in alphabetical order, so you could have like a highly alphabetical placed title and do well just from that without any marketing really. So we had that, and I pitched doing the DVD at the same time, and everybody's like, you can't do that. And then finally I got a company to agree to it. So I was like, great, VOD, DVD, day and date, without knowing that before that term really existed. Or it probably did exist, but wasn't even aware at that time, And then the DVD didn't come out. That company dropped the ball and ended up just not really doing anything. So it's just important. So I was luckily able to terminate that agreement, I guess, luckily, so it was a straight video on demand release. But, that movie, because it had two in the title, it was at the top of the list. So it got a pretty decent return. So I just mentioned that because like that was, distribution at that time. And now, that's when DVD started dying as well. And then studios started focusing their efforts and their marketing efforts to their content that was on VOD. So, now it's to the point today where, you're competing with everything that's been ever made as a movie or a TV show when you make something, So it's like, how do you stand out? And I think that's the biggest problem with independent distribution, period, is you put all this blood, sweat, and tears into your film, and then you hand it over to a distributor, and they don't understand your film and they drop the ball. So it's really important to like not only think about making the film, but like actually putting it out there. And something that, today that you should really think about that wasn't necessarily even a thing a few years ago. I mean, it always has been, but it's just more accessible today, is self-distribution, and I'm definitely not sitting here like pushing self-distribution. I've thought about that myself. I actually had a distribution, my company Traverse Media did distribute films for a while, but it's something as a fail-safe that I strongly believe that you should build into your budget if you have the possibility, which I also understand is independent filmmakers, because I've been there. You're not necessarily like building your entire budget and going to one or two financiers, getting that entire budget and then making your movie. You're most of the time you're piecing it along the way you go. And honestly, don't feel bad about that, because even at a several $1 million level, a lot of times you're piecing it along as the way you go. And that's why on all these indie films, you see 30 or 40 producers of some capacity and like 6 company credits, because it's, independent film financing it's set up, it's not set up necessarily for films to succeed, because you can't necessarily be thinking, okay, we got the finance done, we're filming, now we're thinking about the creative, and then just think about the marketing. Because a lot of the time the distribution, when you're quote unquote financing an independent film the traditional way, which would mean that you're on top of like your equity financing and your, say, tax incentive financing, you're also pre-selling to a distributor for North America, or maybe just a couple other international territories around the world. And when you do that, you have to engage an international sales agent, and then you usually get a loan from a lender against those pre-sales. So they start making your distribution decisions for you,
Right.
So it's just really important to understand that and understand those contracts, so you have as much control as you possibly can have. I mean, at the end of the day, you're going to finish the film, and they know that, so it's like they're going to try to get as much as they can. But there are some guys out there that, as long as you prove that kind of have a good plan and you know what you're talking about, you can get good deals in place. So that was with the Two Dudes in a Dream, and like downloading Nancy. That was the first time I dealt with the international sales agent having to get approval over the actors based on their international sales value and things like that. And we were offered, like, that was back in, this doesn't really happen today, but I think Showtime offered us $1 million in advance for the cable rights at that time.
Wow.
And we turned it down because we thought, we got a Sundance movie, we're going to win an Oscar. That was a very stupid move. And that was my first thing on that level. I was 23, 24 years old. I was like, yeah, cool, we're going to make way more money than that. And it's like, no, that was really stupid. We should have taken that deal. So it's just, just the different ends of the distribution. And that's something I want to talk about today, even like getting into delivering to these companies, what you may have to deliver to a company, say like a Gravitas Ventures, and what you have to deliver to like a studio like Lionsgate, and just things like that you should be prepared for, on top of potentially building in your own marketing budget if you have the chance. And even if you are piecing your financing together and don't have that ability, you should at least make a line item for it in the budget. So you went in with a plan, and you can go back to your investors in the end and say, see, you looked at this budget, here's this line right here where I said that we should have this fail safe because we don't like these distribution offers. And that's what happened to me at Sundance, is we had investors that had a clause in their contract that they got to okay the distribution offers. They didn't like any of the offers that we got out of Sundance on Downloading Nancy. So we had to end up, begging them basically and getting lawyers involved for like 6 months till we finally could take one of the offers on the table, and they were drying up at that time. So we didn't have a lot of options, and then, we were an experiment for this company that was like, had more artsy indie films that were trying to go a little more mainstream. Not to say that this one was mainstream, because it wasn't, but it was a little more than they're used to. And they tried to do a day and date release. Well, they did like 6 theaters, and 5 of them were in Los Angeles and 1 was in New York. And that's the other thing. You think like, oh, New York and LA, those are the big movie towns. Like that's where your movie will do the best. It won't do the best there. It'll do better somewhere else because there's just so many of them and so many of the people, they're in the business, they've been to a friend's screening and all that kind of thing. It's like you've sort of got like your one outing. With that Two Dudes in a Dream movie, we rented out the second biggest theater in the ArcLight, the Dome. Like we didn't get the Dome, but we got the next biggest theater at that venue. So we had a red carpet premiere that we just put together ourselves, you know, and like a whole thing, and it was like felt so fancy. And like again, we're going to get big distribution out of this. So like we packed the house, like there was people standing on the sides, but it's sort of like, you know, we got it straight to VOD, and we blew our big push amongst getting all of our friends out of the house to show up at a theater and walk, you know, like that one time, you know. And then you know, so it's like just even getting your friends to a screening in Los Angeles or New York is tough. So it's like, especially, you know, it's just, it's hard, you know, to again, and it's mainly based on awareness of films, like the fans of your actors and your types of movies. You know, it's hard for them to find it in the sea of content that's out there. So I will wrap that bit up.
Okay. Hi, we're gonna keep you from the rabbit trails as best I can, but these are great stories. Thank you. And they're great to illustrate the points. But let's start like basics. Like what are the basic types of distribution that we're looking at? Kind of go through it 101 for us for a minute. So you've talked about VOD, SVOD, lay all that out. Theatrical,
Like lay out like what they are in particular, or
the
just
parameters within the distribution conversation. So like,
right. So, you know, there's video on demand, and then there's like the different versions of video on demand. You know, you have your transactional video on demand when you go on iTunes and rent the movie for $3.99, or you rent it for the in theaters now pricing if it's doing a day and date release, you know, which is like the $9.99 in theaters now or whatever. And that's pretty much the only reason these smaller companies put movies in theaters and do these day and date releases, because you're not, 9 times out of 10 you're not going to make money on the theatrical side, with especially the small side. It's going to be a loss. But what it does is it gets you that higher, and I'm sorry to have my phone in the frame, I'll get that out of there. What it does is it gets you that higher placement on all the streaming platforms. So it's where it's up here and it says in theaters now and things like that, and you can get that higher price point. So they don't put any marketing into the theatrical. That's going to be like 100% on you. You know, you think you hand it over to the distributor, they got this big marketing team, like they're going to involve you. No, I mean, 9 times out of 10 they're like, yeah, we want to, you know, talk to you about our marketing plans. And they don't really, because they don't really plan on marketing it. They plan on throwing it against the wall and see if it sticks in their sort of template plan of how they put out horror movies or dramas or comedies or whatever they're going to do. So you've got your video on demand, and then you've got your like subscription video on demand, your Netflixes, your Amazon Prime accounts, things like that. And back, say, when I released that Two Dudes in a Dream movie, they had it on the transactional and the subscription at the same time. So you got everybody watching it on Netflix for the, you know, whatever there are, the $6 at the time that they're paying a month, opposed to paying the $2.99 or $3.99 to rent it, which obviously is the filmmaker, that's what you want, you know? So obviously they stagger that for the most part these days, just depending on the deal. Obviously, you know, there may be the situation, say, where HBO Max buys your film and they want to premiere it on HBO Max for a month, you know, before it goes to the transactional and things like that. So there's no like necessarily traditional, as I'm sure you're seeing throughout the pandemic, of a way to do it. But yeah, you've got your video on demand, you've got your streaming, you still do have cable, pay-per-view and things like that. DVD is still a real thing. I've been doing these little monster movies. I started a genre label, a subgenre label called Traverse Terror. And sorry, I never talked about Traverse Media, but we produce films, we sell films, we used to distribute films. We're not really doing it anymore. And we were also managing talent, mostly writers and directors. But right now we're no longer managing, we're no longer distributing, but I am producing and I am selling films, mostly the ones that we produce or have a hand in producing at Traverse, but sometimes I do sell outside films. Like right now I am selling a little genre film for an Australian filmmaker and things like that. I don't necessarily hunt for them every day, but it's sort of like if I come across them organically.
is this the premiere you had? The
No,
page
that
for
one
the,
was a film. Oh, so we just had a film. Just, get me back on track here, but a sidebar to film festivals because it has to do with film distribution.
yeah.
Um, Film festivals, if you've got a film and you've got been accepted to like 50 festivals and you think that's amazing, I'm going to play these film 50 festivals and I'm going to put the laurels on the poster and people are going to buy the film because all these festivals accepted it. That's not true. And if anything, it might hurt you because you've overexposed your film. And the distributors say, well, most of your fans have already seen the thing. So why am I going to like spend money on putting it out there, you know? So you got to be strategic. If you do a short film, play it everywhere. Absolutely. The more eyes you get in front of, the better. But if you're doing a feature film that you plan on making money on or attempting to make money or paying your investors back and things like that, you need to be strategic. So, you know, it's like your Sundance, your South by Southwest, Tribeca, Toronto, Cannes Film Festival, Berlin, you know, of course, like Venice or any of those huge ones like that. But it's like, those are the ones that really mean something. Luckily, if you make a genre film, which I would highly suggest if you're going to make a low budget independent film, that's the area you focus in, unless, you know, you're just doing completely something fresh and out of the box. And if you do a comedy, you know, it's like, you know, like the Duplass brothers, they do a really good job of doing independent comedies, but those movies feel independent, you know, like where I've made the mistake in the past is making independent comedies that feel like more mainstream down the middle. And I literally, you know, Netflix like turned this movie down, one of these movies down. And I said, Netflix, why'd you turn this down? And they said, well, your movie feels like a mainstream comedy, and we keep those slots available for the companies that have big marketing dollars, like the studios that are making those mainstream comedies. For the indie comedies, you know, they need to feel indie, hence like why the Duplass brothers like do so well with what they're doing. So, you know, just something to think about. And of course, there's always exceptions to the rule. There's always breakthroughs, you know. But again, you hear about the breakthroughs. You hear about those people who caught lightning in a bottle. You don't hear about the thousands of others that don't. So if you're trying to like make your first film and get it distributed and make some money, it's not just about the budget. It's also about the genre, because you're, you know, more than likely not going to have recognizable actors, let alone actors that have actual international sales value. But you can completely go non-union, non-recognizable actors in sort of the thriller, sci-fi, horror, monster kind of space, especially like the monster space, because like the monster becomes your celebrity, opposed to, you know, having an actor that you can stick on the poster. You've got a cool monster you can stick on the poster, and that goes a long way. And that's another thing. While I'm on that subject, a lot of distributors today are expecting filmmakers to deliver their own poster and their own trailer, which used to not be a thing. And it's because when you hire these professional companies to do those things, that's tens to 20 to $30,000 if you're getting that whole package of stuff, you know, if you don't have a favor of somebody, because like that's a whole art in itself, like cutting a trailer. So, you know, my advice is look at trailers you like that you feel the movie fits and kind of use that as a template. But yeah, that because another thing to think about is like, if you got a small movie, it's most likely going to live mainly in the video on demand space. So you got to have a poster that stands out on that small thumbnail image, you know, so it grabs people's attention. And distributors, literally, I've sold these little movies off poster and trailer, and some of them haven't even watched the movie, and I don't even think realize that I know they haven't watched the movie because I've never even sent them a screener link, and they've given me an offer on a movie, you know. And I'm just like, I don't say anything. I'm just like, you guys realize you haven't watched the actual movie, you know. So to get back on track, so you got your day and date theatrical, you know, where you do at least 10 major cities. And you can expand from that. And there's companies that have done really good jobs expanding, like A24, like Spring Breakers, for instance. They started that movie in 10 cities and it did well. So they expanded and I think ended up at 1,000 screens, you know, after that. You know, they're like, that's really the pie in the sky independent distributor. I mean, I'm sure you all are aware of that. You know, it's like you do an out of the box independent film that doesn't feel like it's gonna fit at like say a studio kind of level, like those are like, that's the pie in the sky. Neon, the former Alamo Draft House distribution company, transformed into Neon with a big
Mhm.
capital injection. They're the other players in that space. Wellgo, USA. Wellgo does mainly like a lot of the Asian martial arts films that you've seen here in the United States come through Wellgo. They're really good people too, but they're also doing, they've expanded into a lot of other genres, and they really are trying to be a competitor in that neon A24 space. And I hope they do, because they're really good people and they're really good distribution company. But yeah, most of these mid-level distributors, they are focusing on a predominantly video on demand release, where you do the transactional video on demand, where, you're renting it and or buying it, the electronic sell through, and then you go to the subscription. Hopefully one of the subscription streamers like Netflix or Hulu or whoever, they want to pay top dollar to get like an exclusive window to be the only streamer to have it for a while. Sometimes you don't get that, and it makes more sense to be on as many as you can at the same time. That even includes the AVOD platforms now, advertising based, like Pluto, and those got Tubi, so you could be on, Amazon Prime and Tubi at the same time and things like that. Or you could be on Amazon Prime through Epix, because Epix also has an output deal through Amazon Prime. So you're streaming on like the Epix channel and the Epix platform and on their Amazon Prime channel and things like that. There's just so many different ways that it does it. But I guess the main takeaway is it's video on demand predominant. Yes, I think theatrical is going to come back. I think there's the people probably like all of us on this call that love the theatrical experience, and I don't think that's ever going to die. I think it's going to change. My humble opinion is, studios are going to start buying these theater chains because the laws that were in place to inhibit them from doing that have now been abolished as of like a year and a half ago. So I think you're going to go to like a Disney theater and it's going to be like a little mini Disneyland, or, or you're buying merch and you have a little gaming area and things like that. Again, my humble 2 cents, I could be wrong.
All right, I'm going to transition us to some deal terms. Like, what are some general deal terms when you're talking about these avenues? What are the ranges of deal terms?
Yeah, for sure. So, when you typically get an offer with your main terms in an email, before people spend the time to going to contract phase. And that offer, and it may be just like one sheet too on paper, and that's going to have your distribution fee from your distributor, your marketing fees, or hopefully it has those things. And if it doesn't have those things, you need to ask those things and you need to lay those things out. So your distribution fee, your marketing fee, any other associated distribution expenses that they're going to charge. And then a lot of these guys today, and they have been doing this for a while, but they're really getting more aggressive with it. When I say they, I'm talking about distributors. They're asking for back end. They're asking for part of your back end. So they could literally be asking you for a 30% distribution fee, charge you 100 grand in marketing fees, charge you 50 grand in distribution expenses. And then after all that and then if they've paid you any money, which is the MG, the money guarantee or the advance, and they're most likely going to charge you interest on that. So let's say, you got a 30% distribution fee. Like I said, they paid you $100,000 for this film. So the waterfall on how that money is going to pay out. So $100 comes in for your movie, $30 goes to your distribution fee. And then the rest of it goes towards recouping their out-of-pocket expenses, which are their marketing fees and their distribution expenses. So again, if you have marketing at 100 grand, the next 100 grand goes towards that, but that's always after their 30% distribution fee. That's always coming off the top. That's coming off the gross. So the remaining 70% goes to recouping their out-of-pocket expenses. And then once their expenses are recouped, then you pay back your MG plus probably some prime interest rate percentage that's on top of it. So, let's say you're your $100,000 MG that you got plus 2 or 3% or 5%. If you're adding, they might say like 2% plus prime rate or something like that. So, and then you see money after all that. So the MG's paid back, their expenses are paid back. $100 comes in, they take $30 for the distribution expense, and then they might ask you for a 50-50 split, and then they take another 50%, or they, which is something you try to never agree to. I try to typically get the back end completely taken out. If they're paying a lot of money, then sure, whatever. If it's a ton of money, it's whatever you want, because a lot of times you got to look at it like, if you do get an MG, that might be the only money you ever see. Now that really depends on what distributor you're going with. Like just a quick story, like I'm going through that right now, to where these little monster movies that I've been doing under my Traverse Terror label, where we've been selling them mainly to a small independent distributor. And he's paid us upfront anywhere between $20,000 and $40,000 for world rights. So he has an international sales company that handles his internet, the rest of the world, and then he distributes in North America. And so he's giving us that money for an advance against world rights. Well, this guy is also very honest and transparent. So we have bonus structure in the deal. Like if it gets picked up by Walmart on DVD, we get a bonus, $10,000 bonus. And something I don't think I fleshed out earlier when I mentioned it, but there's still DVD business to be had, because we had this little bitty monster movie get picked up by Walmart. So we got $20,000 up front. He gave us a $10,000 advance, which of course he has to recoup as part of the MG. And it's done a total of like $92,000 on DVD, this little bitty independent movie. Now, and so the other day, we got $30,000 for this little movie, which between us here on the call, more than recouped this little film's budget. And then I just got a report just a few days ago, and we got like another $38,000 coming in. So this is going with the little distributor that nobody's ever heard of, but they're honest and they pay. To where I'm also just closed a deal with Lionsgate, a home entertainment deal for one of these little movies that we did at the same exact sort of level. And we're going to get a $65,000 advance on North American rights on that. But I'm probably never going to see another dime during the whole term of the distribution agreement. And the thing is, that term, they asked me for in perpetuity. So forever. They tried to get forever. And as if you're a younger filmmaker, they will try that. Like, that was insulting to me. I'm like, did you guys like Google me or look me up at all? Like, I've, made movies and stuff. I'm not giving you my movie forever. So I got that term down to 20 years. They wanted to do a 50-50 back end split. I got that taken out completely. But I think that had a lot to do with the fact that they had already, it wasn't Lionsgate direct, like they have an output deal with Lionsgate. I think they had already pitched it to Lionsgate, and Lionsgate's expecting the movie. So they kind of had to do the deal. So I had a bit of leverage probably on that one. Because I've pitched them this other little movie that I'm selling now, and they're like, $15,000 in perpetuity buyout. I'm just like, no, I can't do that movie. Now, I'm selling that movie, so I got to present that to the filmmaker, which I haven't done yet, and it's his choice ultimately. But I'm going to talk to him about it. I'm like, we can work with somebody like this company Uncorked over here, they're going to pay you less money, but they're honest and they pay down the road, or you can get this chunk of money up front and never see another dime during the whole term of this distribution agreement. And also say with Uncorked is the little company that I've been working with, and again, great guys if you get a chance to work with them. And Keith over there, who runs the company, he used to be big at Blockbuster. So, he knows the world, he knows the distribution landscape. And again, he knows how to make money on DVD, obviously. So, and the terms I'm doing with Keith are like 8 and 10 years opposed to 20, 25 years. So to circle back on terms in general, a typical where you want to land, which is a reasonable expense, is somewhere around 30% for distribution fee. If you're lucky, maybe you get a little bit less, get a 25. Maybe I've done a 20% distribution fee. I can't remember, possibly. We got an offer on, and again, something I didn't flesh out earlier was we just had a movie premiere at Fantasia. that is a genre film festival that does mean something. So like Fantasia, Fantastic Fest, Fright Fest in the UK, Sitges in Spain, like those, the genre festivals mean something because there's such a strong genre fan base out there, and they're the guys that are getting online and blogging and on Reddit and talking about these films. So that's why they're so powerful, and that's why buyers also pay attention to those festivals. So hence me saying, if you're gonna make a little friends and family indie movie, my advice is to go into the genre world. When I say genre, I mean, you know, thriller, sci-fi, horror, you know, that kind of thing. You know, shy away from the putting no names in dramas or comedies and thinking just because, you know, it's low budget, you're going to make money. Because again, you can make a movie for several $1 million, go to Sundance and still never recoup your money with name actors. So yeah, so try to land somewhere around a 30% fee. I had a company make us an offer on that movie that just premiered at Fantasia. Our first offer that came in at 40% distribution fee, which is too high. I think the marketing expenses were too high. And then I think they wanted like a 60-40 back end split. And then the other thing that was in it, and something, one of these terms we can talk about, if you are lucky enough to get, and I say this because, you know, I'm with this little movie that I'm selling right now, you know, it's like, it was done, you know, really great little genre film done by some Australian filmmakers. And, you know, we've got some straight distribution offers, which just means there's no money up front. But sometimes those are more viable deals, you know, just depending. It's kind of like I'm talking about the Lionsgate home entertainment thing versus this. It's like, sure, Lionsgate is a fancy company and they're putting more money up front, but I'm probably going to see more money in the end with the little companies over there. So it's an experiment that I'm going through right now. And sometimes you can see more money in the end with a straight distribution deal. Now, that said, if you can get them to put a little bit of money up front, they have more skin in the game. So I always like to do that, you know, just to get them a bit more invested. So MGs, they typically pay out in different phases. So a lot of times you get your first chunk of the MG when you've completely executed the contract and turned in your chain of title on the movie and they've approved that. So as far as distribution elements in general, and I'll try not to go too far down that path until we get there, chain of title, you know, which just means like the ownership of your project and your script, you know, like even if you wrote it, directed it, financed it, you're going to have to come up with a chain of title. Now, that said, that can be a one-page agreement with yourself, but as long as it shows like, hey, I actually own this script, and nobody's going to come sue us because I've like stole it from them or stole some ideas from them or things like that. So once they approve your chain of title and you have your contract executed, you typically get your first chunk of the money around that. And then the next chunk is usually paid on full legal delivery, which means all the paperwork, your, you know, actor contracts, your composer contract, music. This is, if you're take anything away from this and you're delivering a movie, your music is usually going to be one of the most important things, because a lot of distributors have been burnt by having like songs in a movie, and then all of a sudden somebody comes around and like, hey, my song's in that movie, and I let that person use it for a YouTube video, not a movie that they're making money on. And, you know, and then all of a sudden somebody's getting sued and they're trying to have the movie taken down, and distributors not like that. So like right now on the little movie that I'm dealing with, the Lionsgate thing, to where in the past with this like stock music licensing company, you know, with the smaller distributors, not that big of a deal delivering those songs. Lionsgate's like, no way, we can't do this agreement with them. They're not saying they won't work with them, but they're saying, here's our template agreement. You need to get them to sign this, or you're going to have to replace the music. So right now we're literally replacing the music. And that's something I probably should have done more so on my end, is told the film, you know, reviewed where my director that I'm working with is getting his songs from, and making sure that the terms and conditions around those songs matched up with any distributor. But, you know, I didn't necessarily think that, again, this is me going through this now, a mistake that I'm making, you guys can learn from and hopefully never do it, is that I never assumed we'd have to deliver to a studio, you know, on this little movie, but we do. and that's something to think about. It's like you could end up, you may not end up with the big theatrical release, but you could end up through the home entertainment department. And especially because, like, I actually, through the department at home entertainment at Lionsgate that the movie is going through, I actually pitched it to them directly. They passed on it, but this other company that has an output deal with them, that has their own autonomy to put whatever they want out through that company, to a certain degree, they've paying, they're paid money and paid more money than anybody else has for the North American rights, and they're putting it through them. So because of that, they're much more careful about all the legal paperwork side of things. And listen, and I get it, if you're making a $20,000 movie, $50,000, $100,000 movie, you don't necessarily have the money to hire an entertainment attorney or even necessarily a contract attorney. But you can find some templates online, that you can work from, that are some good resources. It's just like getting the paperwork. These people will work with you. They obviously, if you can just have everything ready to go and have simple deliver, they're going to want to work with you more again in the future. So, the other thing just to take away quickly about, say, the Lionsgate delivery is, even though this is straight home entertainment, they're asking for stuff that they would ask for if they're putting it in theaters. And I think Andrea is actually going to share that delivery list with you at some point later. So it's just, these are things to think about.
And I
So
think
maybe when we're talking about,
there. Yeah, and I think that'll help tie back things. Let's go ahead and pull up. We want to do the indie one first. So this is a list of actual deliverables, so we can talk through it, because you have to have this through every stage of production. So, and we talked a little bit about this in the legal, we had entertainment attorneys talk to us a little bit. So let's open the indie distribution.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, when it comes to delivery, there's expenses. There's more expenses that you need to budget for. At least you need to be aware of it. And again, I get it. Sometimes you're just getting the movie done, and you don't, and it's kind of like, all right, we filmed it. Now we got to find the money for post-production. And now we got post-production. But even after that, if you're lucky enough to sell it, you're going to have to pay for some of these elements. So yeah, the first thing that's going to be on this list are sort of your master files that you have to create. And that means your picture, your sound, and things like that. So you're not just turning in one file with the movie and the sound all together. It's like they want the sound separate. They actually want each sound stem separate. They usually want, the songs individually that you have in the movie. It just all depends. So, just a very basic expense that you're going to have to think about. And you're lucky if you're getting into it these days, that you can put most of this stuff on a hard drive, because used to have to make like HD cam tapes and things like that, which are essentially big VHS tapes and, things. Luckily, you can just pretty much deliver on a hard drive all your master files these days. And then you can also deliver all your legal files on PDF. Typically the company will set up a Dropbox. So anything you can do through Dropbox is important. So yeah, so it's just like, look at these like ProRes, HQ, 422 or like 444s. Those are something, somebody's going to have to create for you. And a lot of distributors have different specs. So there's really no need to make these until you have your deal in place. Or if you self-distribute, to figure out, to see exactly what you need for that self-distributor. Again, like they're asking for the masters of the trailer here at the bottom. If we can scroll down, like a lot of these companies, and if you can cut yourself a decent trailer or get somebody to cut you a decent trailer, that's going to go a long way, because that's what's going to get somebody to watch the movie, especially if you don't have any name actors in it. But a bad trailer can also help you. So just definitely, once you have your trailer, ask your friends and family and trusted people, like, for true opinions. Like, is this a good trailer? Is this helping me? Because all of us, like when we make these things, we get in the zone and we think this is great. And then other people may not think that. So, so just, that's something to think about too. And so you're going to have to deliver the trailer on these similar files, and just different specs. So this, again, this is for Uncorked, this delivery list here. So this will be on the lower end of stuff that you're going to have to deliver, but you're always going to have these master files. A lot of these guys are going to ask for trailer. Again, if you have any like text in the film, you have to take out the text and things like that, just deliver different versions of them. They ask you for the script that you've shot with. It's asking you here on number 2, the finishing, where it says finishing materials, closed captions. Luckily, that's not a huge expense these days. For small indie films, I would recommend going to rev.com. You can probably get those for around $100. Something that may be down lower, but I'm going to cover it now just in case it's not, and it will be on the other distribution list, is a CCSL, which is a combined continuity script spotting list. Combined continuity and spotting list. Yeah, something like that. To where it's basically like you've got somebody, you can do this yourself. You can get a template. It's going to take you, it's a very tedious job. But if you're saving money and you don't want to pay somebody $1,500 to do it, this is something you can do yourself, or you can outsource on some of these like platforms online, to ask people to do stuff. Some of these film platforms. I think we actually got it done for $100 from somebody through one of these platforms. But if you go to a standard company, they're going to charge you anywhere from $1,200 to $2,000. And it's basically, you're going through a time coded version of the film, every line, when it starts, when it stops, like all that kind of stuff. It's, but it's just, and, a domestic distributor, North America, they may not ask for that, but it comes in really important when you start translating to different languages and things like that. So if you have any sort of international, a CCSL is going to be a requirement. So that's something to think about. Okay, stills. Now this is something, always think about this, and because this is something you can do, but you probably want to have somebody designated. After the fact, what you do is you take screen grabs of your movie, but they want stills, and it's more important, like actual, and again, you can do this screen grabs, but just plan for it, as long as that's your plan in the first place. Like there's an on-set still photographer on movies for a reason, and they're taking, and it's not, behind the scenes photos are nice to have them, but that's not their main requirement. They're mainly looking for stills to create marketing materials and artwork and, things like that. So right here, like Uncorked is asking for 50. Well, like, bigger companies, they'll ask for 300. And the thing is too, is like, once you get to the level where you're working, hopefully at your beginning level, you're working with, non-union actors that you just kind of sign off the rights, where they don't have any right to like sign off on their own stills. But once you get to a certain, once you're working with agents of actors and things like that, they're going to have to approve their stills. Now, there's things in the agreement that will help you out to saying that like they have to approve a certain minimum of them. And then what sucks is like if you got 2 actors in a still, you have to have them both approve it. So a lot of the times one of them likes it, one of them doesn't. So again, at this first level, I highly recommend, like in the agreement, if you can, get them to sign off to where they do not get still approval, and you can just turn in what you need to turn in. Again, key art, that's talking about the poster. They're going to want to ask for the layered files of that. Again, it's something that it's not going to stop you from a distribution deal if you don't have art or if you don't have trailer, but it just puts you in a better position. But if it's not good, it also, that doesn't help you either. So it's just, as I said, ask your friends and family, tell them you want true opinions. If it does not look like the professional posters that you're seeing out there and trailers you're seeing out there, probably don't use it. But yes, try to create something, try to find a graphic designer friend, something, get clever, because even if it's something that, say, like, even if it's just a piece of like art for your sales purposes, they can just catch their attention. That's not necessarily going to be what they use. If you have something, a good image that just catches people's attention, like that is the important thing, press kit. So press kit or electronic press kit, EPK or behind the scenes, that's another thing. Like, try to get a friend to film, take their iPhone or whatever and film some behind the scenes, because that always helps. That it's always an ask for delivery lists. It's not going to be 100% requirement, but it's always, the more of this stuff you have, the better. Also with the press kit, they're also talking about a text one, too, or bios, cast and crew, like production notes, which means like this was filmed in Missouri and whatever, and this is the aspect ratio and things like that. Again, a lot of this stuff these days you can Google. There's no shame in that. I still Google stuff like, what does that mean again? Website, I wouldn't worry about too much about that, but you can, like, if you're amazing at building websites, or have a friend that is, and that's something you can throw in the mix and add to it, great. You don't, again, if you somehow think you can build a huge social media following, or if you've got somebody that's like, while you're filming, like handling your social media, and you're building in a fan base while you do that, amazing. A lot of times on small independent films, you don't have those resources, but if you can, absolutely. Information sheet, they'll typically give you a template, or you just give the information that they're asking for. They're going to ask you for like credit requirements. So you, again, maybe you're doing it all yourself, and you don't necessarily have an agreement with actors or your director of photography or things like that, where you have to put them in a certain position on the main titles of the movie or on the poster or things like that. But if you want yourself on that, and you want to make sure that you stay on those things, you're going to want to add that to your own contract and say, like, these are the credits. You're going to have to turn in a text version of the main titles, a text version of your end credits. Let's see, you have to turn in just a contact list, all simple stuff, but just stuff you have to be prepared for, something you hopefully have already. What does it say? Yeah, it's going to ask for most of your like key people's agreements, so especially your composer, because again, that goes into the music. And quickly, just while I'm on that note, with any of these agreements with your key personnel, and especially your music and things like that, is you always want to have that this is a work made for hire in the agreement, and you always want to have no injunctive relief, which means that basically, if your director of photography or one of your actors isn't happy, that they could sue you and stop the movie from being released, or especially if the movie's out, to stop. So if you do not have agreements with no injunctive relief in them, you will then have to get new agreements. So you might as well do it in the beginning. So no injunctive relief. And yeah, work made for hire, saying you own the work, for the movie. And when it comes to like songs that you're licensing specifically, look into master and synchronization licensing, because that's actually two different licenses. You can combine them into one agreement, but you're gonna, and that's, say, a problem with some of these stock music companies. The one that I'm currently dealing with is their current agreement only handles the synchronization side and not the master of the recording. So just something you're going to want to look into there. Music cue sheets are very important too. That rolls into this music. You have to put, at what time this movie, the song starts in the movie, and what time it ends. And you're going to want to put the publisher of the music and the owner. So it's just like, if the band has a publisher, or they might have their own publishing company, you're still going to need all that information, and they're going to be registered with one of these sort of residual organizations from ASCAP or BMI. You're going to need all that information. Again, tedious work. Hopefully you have a composer, and hopefully the composer does this for you and has some experience with building music cue sheets. Some of these bigger companies like a Lionsgate, they will give you a template to work from, but you can definitely find stuff online. Again, the smaller companies will be a little more lenient, but they're definitely always going to ask for a music cue sheet. And that's where the musicians get paid the residuals. So basically, if the movie goes to broadcast television or something like that, that's where the cue sheet goes to that person, and say that broadcaster, they're the ones actually paying those residuals directly to the ASCAP or the BMI and places like that. So music licenses, like we're talking about right here, it talks about next. Again, I can't stress how important this stuff is. Composer, again, make sure you know have all those proper portions of the licenses. So this is stock footage and stock stills. Again, some of these companies aren't going to have the agreements that you want, like, so if you can avoid it, make sure, try to find out if they have licensed they have stuff that they have licensed that are in movies that have went through bigger companies. A lot of the times too is they'll charge you more for that. They'll say, oh, well, you owe more, even though their agreement basically says the same thing. Again, smaller company like this, it may be worth trying to see if it passes before you have to go to the company and get the actual movie license or something like that. But just be prepared, like right now we are replacing music. Our composer has said, you know what, I'll redo those songs. And luckily he's also the sound mixer, because that's the other part, is we have to remix the sound once we pull those out, and he's just interested in doing it. So we got lucky on that one. Just things to think about. Your screen and paid ad credit requirements, that just basically, like, if you have an actor agreement that says I have to be in all paid ads, which means all the posters and advertising material and things that goes out there. Again, at your starting out lower level, hopefully it's all at your discretion and not theirs, and you can, of course, you want to give them credit where credit's due, but it just makes legal delivery so much easier if you don't have those requirements, and you can just send the buyer a little letter that says we have no actual requirements, instead of having to list them all out and all that kind of stuff. And then you get down here to chain of title, as I said, like it. So, for my little movie that we're doing now, it's as simple as I have a work made for hire agreement with the writer. I have a receipt of payment, and that's receipt of payment. Music, always get receipts of payment, confirmation that they received your payment, even if you're paying them $1, that. And I would say you're better off, even if you're getting the movie for free, you're better off at least having an agreement to say that they were paid $1 and you paid them that dollar. Chain of title, again, so I have a very simple work made for hire writer agreement. I have a receipt of payment that I paid the writer. We decided to change the title of the screenplay, so I just made a certificate, because I had the right in my work made for hire writer agreement to change that title. So I just did a certificate saying we've decided to change the title. And then really the copyright. And the things to think about on the copyright quickly, and that will definitely be in here, but I'll just go ahead and touch on it now, is that you're going to have to copyright the screenplay and the motion picture. Now, technically, if it is a work made for hire, like my current situation, the motion picture copyright, as long as you state that, which includes the screenplay, you can do one copyright. But again, most distributors, and I'm sure it will say it in here, they're asking for the screenplay copyright and the motion picture. So I am going through and seeing if they're going to make me also do the screenplay right now. Luckily, it takes a while to get your copyright certificate in the mail. You're dealing with the government, so it's like they're going to take their time. But what is sufficient is that you have the as long as your form that you submit and your receipt of payment, if you can show that, that will be acceptable to the distributor, and then you just send them the certificate once you get it. Rights agreements, again, that's talking about, like, say, if you're not lucky enough to just have a work made for hire agreement, if you have to option a screenplay, that's just to make sure that the writer has, make sure that they have clearly assigned you the rights and that you have the right to do all this stuff. And always try to avoid agreements. Like, obviously, when you're making independent films, you're offering a lot of people like bonuses down the road. Like, if, we make money, you make money, which totally makes sense. And you want to take care of your people. Absolutely. But make sure that, like, try to do it in a way where maybe they're more involved with your profit participation on the back end, opposed to, like, especially with music, like because they call it a step deal with when it comes to music, to where it's like, hey, if this movie makes X amount in the box office, you as the songwriter get this. That is going to be a problem every time, like it, because it's just like, what if you can't pay that? It's like, and this is something to think about too, just like on the filmmaker side. It's like, I was negotiating a deal. They're sort of like, hey, if it hits this amount of money in the box office, the actor gets this bonus. Well, you don't know when that bonus is going to be paid out, or if it's going to be paid out. That could get eaten up with distribution expenses and things like that. And then you're personally on the hook for paying that. And if you haven't paid that, then they can sue you and they can say, hey, and that causes trouble around your movie one way or another, and for yourself. I mean, I've know people, producers, that have like lost their homes because they've made these agreements, and they're like, yeah, you owe me the money, sell your home, sorry. So just things to be careful about. Location releases, photo releases, things like that. Again, just as much as you can protect yourself and legally as humanly possible. I get it. You're making low budget films, you're stealing shots, stuff like that. Just don't tell them if you didn't have didn't officially get an agreement. Just turn in what you have, and hopefully they don't catch anything. Luckily, maybe I shouldn't be saying this, but it's like, if you can get releases, for certain products or whatever, the rule of thumb sort of is, and especially with small independent films, as long as you're not disparaging the product, as long as you're not like showing an Apple computer and like, man, this thing's junk, you're, as long as it's like, oh, functioning in the right way that it should be handled. And that comes with your film, if you get the right to film in a convenience store or a grocery store or something like that, as long as, like, again, somebody's not opening a can of Pringles and be like, oh, these are the worst chips I've ever had, you're probably going to be okay. If you can get those approvals, if you feel confident and get the release, great. But, you're going to be a small movie in a sea of content on video on demand. Most likely Pringles, is not going to notice it. But again, try not to disparage any product, especially if you don't, if it's a real product and you don't have the right to do so. Copyright
Let me
registration.
ask real quick, what about like product placement deals though? If you were to get something like that, how does that work on the back end?
Well, typically with product placement, they are giving you that product, or they are giving you the right just to sort of be featured. It's sort of, you're giving them a free commercial essentially. Maybe some of you heard that there is money from product placement. There is, I've never gotten it. I've gotten free stuff. Like, people have given us free stuff, like free phones, and a lot of them you have to send that back, but at least you have free props that you can use, and you don't have to worry about covering the label and things like that. Because you guys have probably noticed in films, where, like, say the emblem of a car is covered up or something like that. Again, as long as you're not disparaging the product, you're probably okay. Or if you're, not making a porno or something, it's like or something that they consider at that level, you're probably okay. But yeah, typically, and there are companies that do that. They will give you product to put in your movie for free, and they'll ship it to you, and they'll probably even pay for the shipping back, but and you're probably giving it back. Or if you have like a recognizable actor in the movie, they're like, hey, I sent you that laptop, they can have it, kind of thing. Well, please ask them to tweet about it or something, maybe. But you're most likely not going to get that from big national companies unless you have recognizable actors in your film. But it doesn't mean there's not local people, like Jeff City has the ice cream factory, go to those guys and say, hey, can we feature ice cream in our movie? And I'm sure they would say yes.
But to get it paperwork, so you have it at the end. Yeah.
Yes, but always get paperwork, always have like releases, like, if you're stealing a shot at the ice cream factory in Jefferson City, that, and there's people there eating in the background, talk to them, say, hey, you guys mind if you're in the background eating ice cream in my movie, and get them to sign releases, just in case. I've had that happen to where I had a movie where I was just talking about this yesterday, actually. Did a movie called Errors of the Human Body that came out, I think, 2011. And it was the lead character was a geneticist, and he was giving a lecture in a big lecture hall at the Genetic Research Institute that he was working at. We were lucky enough to actually be able to film in the real place because of the director's family connection, basically, to there. So the actor has a presentation on a big projection screen, and there's like 20 faces, like just kind of headshots of people talking about the differences in people. And somebody's watching the movie and sees theirself, and they didn't give, whoever we got the photo from did not have the right to give that photo to a movie. So we had to end up paying them a couple $1,000 just because there's a little small piece. And it wasn't even like, like I'm now. I mean, it was like one of like 20 on a projection screen, and they caught that, So it's like things like that. Yes, most likely that's not going to happen, but it can. So, and that's the thing too. Like, let's say you have an agreement with a music licensing or stock footage licensing company, and this is something that'll be down here in this distribution and delivery list, is E&O insurance, which is errors and omissions insurance. So every distributor is going to ask for it. Luckily, with some of the smaller ones like Uncorked and say Gravitas Ventures, you can a lot of times get them to say, hey, can we waive this requirement for E&O insurance until you have a platform that asks for it? So if, like, say Uncorked licenses this to Netflix, they're probably going to require E&O insurance. So at that point, you have to get E&O insurance. That is going to cost you anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000. And that basically says, if there is an error that you get sued for, but that wasn't, malicious on your behalf, that you didn't purposely know that it was going to be something, this E&O insurance takes care of that. And you can get to the lower side, maybe even a little less than 3,000, but I don't know, just because of the way we are right now with the pandemic, probably 3,000 plus on any level. So you basically have like 1 in 3 million worth of coverage, and 3 to 5 million, which basically means 1 million per incident with a 3 million total payout, or a 3 million per incident with a 5 million total. So obviously, say I went from Uncorked waiving the insurance requirement until they actually need it, to say selling a Lionsgate Home Entertainment, where they not only want insurance, they want the 3 to 5 million, and that cost us $4,500 basically. And that's me getting that price with not patting myself on the back here, but just saying with my resume. So your resume as like a first or second time producer, they're going to see you as more of a risk that you may not have went through this as, with the experience of looking at all this stuff that I did. Now, that said, if you've got a great entertainment attorney, that's better than me. So, so that's something they ask you to list on the application. And a lot of these distributors too, like say Lionsgate, they not only ask for your E&O policy, they ask for your application to make sure that you filled it out properly. And you see what's put on there. So, and on that application, they ask you for your budget of your movie. So hopefully you didn't tell them it was a $5 million movie and you made it for 50, and you put 50, because that's another thing too. It's like, like the cost of everything all reflects on what you pay for the insurance as well. So, and there's a lot of good insurance brokers, and good insurance, they want to make money, obviously, but you can talk with them. They can talk through this stuff. And again, I'm sure there's a lot of Googleable information out there. Dubbing and subtitling requirements. When you get to the level of actors, as I said, a bigger level of actors, they may say, like, if you're going to dub any lines, that I have to do it, myself. You can't just hire somebody else to do it, or they have approval over the dub or something like that. So again, hopefully you have no restrictions on being able to dub somebody or subtitle them, because dubbing isn't so much of a thing for North America, but in other countries it is. If you go to American movies, or English language movies, in, like, say Spain or Latin America, things like that, those are dubbed. They don't do subtitles really. We're actually one of the only major sort of countries that does subtitles. A lot of other people dub it. So something to think about.
So I'm going to switch to the other agreement real quick. So, and you guys put some questions in the chat while we do that. And we'll be taking questions here in a quick minute. I'll get this other one up. So then the second one is a little bigger deliverables list.
Yeah, this will be the one that Lionsgate requires. And again, as I said, all distributors are going to have different requirements, but this is, a basic to think about if you are lucky enough to sell your movie on a bigger level, or you sell your little movie to home entertainment through a bigger company, they're going to still ask for a lot of stuff that, they're going to ask you for the exact same stuff they're going to ask for a movie that they're going to put in 2,000 theaters. Now, that said, yes, you can get them to waive that stuff. But something to think about when it comes out to paying that MG that I was talking about earlier is you have to complete delivery. They have to say, yes, not just you've turned it all in, they pay you. They have to say, yes, you've completed delivery. Now we're going to pay you our final payment. And just to touch on that, sometimes these people are like, oh, we'll pay you the last payment on release of the movie, or we'll pay you the last payment on 6 months after the release of the movie. I got an offer the other day. It was like in 6 payments, and it went to like 6 months after the movie's released to a year after the movie's released, which is BS. They're just paying you with your own money at that point. But so, always try to negotiate full payment by end of delivery or by the release of the movie, worst case. But again, they might release, just put it this way too, they can release the movie and not have accepted full delivery or paid you your full MG yet. So something to think about. So obviously, when you say go to Lionsgate Home Entertainment, they're like, oh yeah, you're not going to have to deliver all that stuff. Say, great, let's actually cross the stuff off that we don't have to deliver, because when you don't deliver it, they can still use it to hold up paying you. And yes, they will. More so at the higher level than, say, your small, honest, transparent company. And I'm not saying Lionsgate's not honest. I'm just saying I've had a really great experience with Keith in particular over at Uncorked. So yeah, general provisions up here at the top, same basic stuff. And again, here in these first like physical delivery, when I say physical, that means like the actual master files of the movie. If we can keep going down, you're going to have your same basic master files, but look at the amount of different basic master files here. Your DSM file for your DCD. I have a general idea of what a lot of this stuff is, but some of you tech people probably know more than me. Like the digital cinema package here, that's the DCP. That's what they use. They don't send, you're not doing film prints anymore on, it's funny because like they still call like P&A and expense in some of these distribution agreements, which means prints and advertising. That means prints of film prints of the movie, which for the most part, does not exist anymore. The digital cinema package is the DCP. You have to actually create like a little, it used to be more like a VHS clunky piece of material. Now it's just looks exactly like a little hard drive, or is a little hard drive, or there's even digital distribution of the DCP, but you still have to create that master file. Sometimes they will ask you for a physical DCP, the physical like actual little hard drive of it. If you also look just under say either 2.3 or 2.4 here, it says the LTO. That is a tape that is actually more of an old school throwback that they're bringing back now, because the LTO is a little magnetic tape that, and I would say just for filmmakers in general, for your, say, you make your master and you got your main hard drive of all your, raw footage and your movie material and stuff like that. If you have the opportunity, back it up on LTO. That's because it's cheap and it'll last longer than your hard drive will. It'll, last the life of probably you and any potential use of the movie. Before everything's completely digital. So that's a good way. But that said, it might be most people don't have that hardware at home to create LTO tapes. So that is, even though the LTO, could be an expense in itself. So some of these people are asking you to deliver on LTOs. So again, that's something to think about, and it's worth at least noting in your budget. For this, I was able to say, hey, can we nix the LTO and deliver on a hard drive? They said yes, but there's also the positive and negative of that as well, because now we have to buy a huge hard drive, to where you can fit, this stuff on these little tapes and ship it and stuff a lot easier than you can, 3 or 4 hard drives, or your super expensive hard drive and things like that you have to buy to put this on with multiple terabytes. So yeah, you can create, and some of these, like if you are a tech person, like for instance, I'm lucky in the sense that my director on these little movies that I'm doing, he can create all these files himself. He doesn't have the stuff to create LTOs, hence us nixing that on the delivery list. Because if he had that, which I do know a director that did, he is a tech guy and he does have that set up himself, but this particular one doesn't. But luckily he can create all these things. What they're going to do right here, it says quality control. I'm assuming, if you get into the, aspect ratio, either what your aspect ratio is, your DP knows what your aspect ratio is, or whoever your tech post person is that is creating these files for you is going to know that. But again, that's just going to be a question you're going to be asked that you're going to have to fill out on certain information sheets that'll also go under your production notes. Quality control, that's sort of like when I said, like, you turn the stuff in the distributor, that doesn't mean it's delivered. They have to approve it first. So when you turn in all your master files of your picture and your audio, they're going to run it through their QC process. I had a international sales agent, just the first time I've seen this the other day, that they asked us to deliver a quality control, and I guess maybe that's even what this is asking for. I think I got that nixed. It's saying that we have to pay somebody to do a QC, quality control report on our film. Thing is, there's always going to come back things saying, hey, whatever. A lot of the times you can get away with saying that was a creative choice, but sometimes if certain, like if you got a frame that's slipping and it's causing an issue with the picture or a certain sound thing, they may have you fix that. So just something to be aware of. When you get down here to the ultra high definition, high dynamic range masters for home entertainment, they don't need that. That's theatrical stuff. Really, I mean, I guess we're also getting there, as far as like Netflix streaming and stuff like that. But you can usually get them to admit that. But again, it's just stuff to be aware of. And just while I'm thinking about this, speaking of sound, where it mentions it down here, the Dolby, the thing is like, if you want to get an official Dolby license, that's another expense. That's a few $1,000s. Typically, distributors don't require it, because basically you can do it in Dolby, but you don't have the license or whatever. Most sound people have that ability. But I've never come across a situation where they've made me license the Dolby. Sometimes they license the Dolby and they add that onto their distribution expenses. And that's just something that I think it'll be down here too. It's like, but like say the MPAA rating, it's like most of these people aren't going to require you to get that done. But if they do get that done, that's going to be another $4,000 or $5,000 expense, And with independent movies, usually they'll release them unrated officially. So you don't worry about that. But say, for instance, with Lionsgate, they're probably going to get an MPAA rating for that film. So that's going to be another, $5,000 on those distribution expenses. And something I also didn't kind of finish out saying there, cap those expenses basically to reasonable amounts. Now, like marketing, if they're really going to market your movie and they're going to actually put the dollars into it, great. But, try to cap all expenses in a reasonable spot, or to where you can sign off if they want to spend more. So it's like, oh, you've capped your marketing at $35,000, but they're like, hey, actually, we think we have an opportunity to expand this into 100 theaters, and we're going to hire this outside PR company. We're going to hire this outside digital advertising company, and this is what the expenses are going to go. And we want to spend another $100,000. At that point, sure, sign off. If they have a plan and they're going to spend it on legitimate costs. Again, these are just more master files, just all this
Cole,
kind
can
of
we
stuff.
share this? Can we share these with the participants?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So we'll get to that. You have some more highlights somewhere down here.
If there's anybody's email on there, don't email them, please.
Okay, I'll make sure they're clean.
You got it from me.
They're clean.
Yeah. So look at so if you go up here, go up back a little bit.
Yep.
So again, these are all just like master files. Like this is what the amount of stuff that you can go down a little bit. Sorry, just
Okay.
the bottom of what I wanted to touch on is here, EPK. So this
Yeah.
is what I was talking about earlier. So yeah, Uncork didn't necessarily ask for that, but this is that electronic press kit where you're interviewing your actors, your director, or doing some behind the scenes and stuff like that. Again, even here, you could probably get these people to admit it, but they're gonna like it better if you have it, kind of thing. But I'm just saying, like, again, look at the amount of files that you're asked to deliver at this kind of level. And this is for the trailer as well. And again, you probably saw the trailer CCSL right there. And so if you get now we're into the color photography, what does it say? A minimum of 50.
300.
So this says, does it say 50? Okay. Huh. Per principal actor. So yeah, there you go. 50 per actor. So yeah, they're asking for, and I think I even got an updated list after this that's actually attached to my agreement to where it just gave me a flat number of 300. So again, if you have actors that have approval over that, that's a lot of approvals to get, especially if there's multiple actors in each thing. So it's really like when you're in production, thinking if you can set up a file system and start doing this, it's much smoother if you do that. So again, here it's asking for the screenplay, motion picture copyright, chain of title against lien clearance. If you get to the point where you're borrowing money for your movie, those lenders are going to have a lien on your movie. So you have to probably get something signed from your lender to say, yes, I can enter into this agreement, blah, blah, blah. Copyright report and title report. Another expense that most distributors are going to ask for. So you can probably get both of these things for around $1,200 to $1,500. Probably get it a little cheaper if you order them at the same time from the same company. It's basically just saying that this legal company who specializes in this has ran a report on the copyright, and yours is clear and your title is clear. Sometimes they'll even ask for a legal opinion saying that this report is legit. You can most of the time get that waived. Like as long as the report is not showing a bunch of potential red flags, you can get that legal opinion waived. But of course, that is going to cost you extra. Usually the same company will do it, Or if you have an attorney, you could say, get the copyright report, have your attorney say, in my opinion, they may accept that if it's an experienced entertainment attorney. But again, that's an extra cost that you should definitely budget in. Here's for your E&O application. It talks about these limits that I was talking about earlier. A lot of times, all distributors will ask for these levels, but you can get them to go down to $1 million for a single occurrence and $3 million for aggregate claims, but they didn't on this one. So again, I had to pay $4,500 for this E&O policy for this particular delivery list. And then the certs just means that and it's just a good idea for yourself, just the different people you're specifically having covered in the policy. So basically they're saying, and I go to my insurer and I say, I need Lionsgate, covered on my policy, but also, cover your writer and your other producing partners and stuff like that when you do it. Talent agreements, again, I've covered, the important things of talent agreements, cast and crew list. You have to turn in again all kinds of just approved synopsis. Here's your CCSL that I talked about. Different, files that sometimes I've been asked for like a Word file of main titles, a JPEG file, a PSD file. It just depends. Your billing block. Another thing that's really important, because I'm thinking about the billing block, is your copyright notice that it mentions right there. Definitely, which is just you putting a line of the year you copywrote it and who you copywrote it to, but you need that on your end titles, and you're going to want that on your poster in your billing block as well, because that is how you see these films, these cult classic films that you wouldn't think be in the public domain, end up in the public domain. Well, not fully, but part of it. So always post your copyright notice. Again, screen credit obligations that we talked about before, name and likeness obligations. Again, once you get this one, Andrea, it's all pretty apparent. Again, they're wanting to know, like, if you have to fly actors to a premiere, if you get in a festival, you have minors, things to avoid in movies, minors and animals. If you can, like, if you have minors, you're gonna have to hire a teacher, no matter if it's school season or not. You're gonna have to hire that person. You can only work them so many hours. Animals are just a pain every time, you're on their schedule, they're not on yours. But you have to, like, American Humane disclaimer, Adam Walsh to say you didn't do anything that's negative against minors. Laboratory access letter, it's something they'll provide you, just saying that, they have access to your film lab to get all your master materials directly. They don't have to go through you. Small independent films, you potentially are going to be the lab, so that's fine. Cue sheet again, music licenses again, I can't stress how important. Composer, I can't stress how important. So like this one is asking for literally a copy of all the song lyrics.
Wow.
So just something to think about in advance. Out of context music basically means saying, like, you have the right to use it out of context of how you're currently using it in your film, in case they want to, like, take a song and put it in a trailer that they edit or something like that. So if you can get that, do. Stock footage, releases, clips. Again, if you can avoid it, great, but I know it's a very handy tool in independent filmmaking if you want some, like, aerial shots and stuff like that. Certificate of origin, something to think about. It's simple. You're basically just saying this movie was made in the United States and blah, blah, blah. But you have to go get it notarized. So if you're not a notary, that's going to cost you $10. So I think there's like 4 documents that this delivery list is requiring you to notarize. So there's $40. It adds up once you've spent your life savings on making the movie. They're asking for a list of distributors for international territories. Again, hopefully you're that lucky that you already have those by the time you're doing your North American agreement. Something else to think about international distributors is that a lot of North American distributors will make you hold back international releases until they release it. So basically this agreement for this particular delivery list says that international distributors cannot release the movie any earlier than they can, which may suck if they did not. Sometimes they don't want to release the movie for a year. So you typically try to add something in if it's not already there, to where it's like the earlier of which date, which is 6 months after complete delivery or the North American release. Fact sheet, that's all pretty, just they'll have a standard form. MPA rating, as I said, they're asking me to turn it in on this one, but I got them to pay for it. Residual worksheet, if you're working with any unions, there will be residuals, so you have to get those residuals worked out and fill that out. Most distributors are not going to assume that responsibility, but they still want to be aware of it. So if you're making your low budget, indie movie, there's no need. If you can find non-union actors, and I'm sorry because I know I got my SAG rep listening in here, but it's better to make a mistake and learn the process, like making the movie with non-union, than it is, because like if you get into the unions and you start causing problems, because SAG, they want you to make that movie, but their number one priority is going to be their clientele, their member base, so and they have all these things to do. And I highly suggest, even if you're non-union, anything like that, and especially, like, say, your investors, you're transparent with all this stuff, like say my work made for hire agreement that I did with my writer, like that's a friend of mine, but I'm taking care of her with like a back end agreement, opposed to what the distributor needs to see, because it's just the more back end stuff and hangups the distributor, that just the longer it takes them to go through it, the more questions they're going to have, the more chance they're going to ask you to get an additional agreement assigned. And if you have to start terminating agreements, doing new agreements, that's why it's like always helpful to just do all the paperwork and do it properly up front. So it's like, if you are doing a SAG movie, and SAG has been really great about the ultra low budget agreements, and even and she can probably talk a little bit more about the new agreement. I think there's like a $25,000 agreement, which allows you to work with SAG actors. So, I kind of wish personally, and no offense to anybody, that SAG made you like take a test to be able to make those movies, to make sure, because the fortunate thing is it gives you upcoming filmmakers a lot of opportunity to make films, but unfortunately on the other side, it floods the market with films, so again, you're looking at more competition today than you've ever had before. You're literally competing against every movie and every TV show that's ever been made for viewership time. So
and we are next month. It was a really good preview. Next month, we are going to talk about SAG contracts and working with talent using your casting director. And Maureen's going to talk to us about those agreements. So
yeah,
come back next month.
And you'll get a SAG rep. It's not like you just get the paperwork and then I say you're on your own. Utilize your rep, make sure you're doing everything right, because SAG is not somebody you want to upset in your early stages of making movies, because you're gonna have to work with them the rest of your career. So you want to be on good terms with SAG and know how those agreements work. But know though, when you make some of these smaller agreements and you start getting distributed at different levels and making money, you have to bump up your deal for some of these actors, so just things that you need to be aware of, that because I get it, as filmmakers, you're just like, get the movie done, get the movie out there, not thinking about so many things. But
awesome. So I know that was a lot of information and it's important. We had one question I know I saw, and we'll start to take some questions. Anthony, you want to jump on? And you were asking about like ballpark budget for deliverables. I know that's a big question.
Yeah, so ballpark budget. So let's just say MPA rating, if you have to do that, $5,000. E&O insurance, because you're likely to have to do E&O insurance at some point if you get any sort of meaningful distribution. So you say $3,000 to $5,000 for that. Hard drives for all the delivery stuff, however much hard drives are that have 4 to 8 terabytes, kind of thing. And depending on how big your movie is and again, what exactly they ask for. So with that uncorked list, you can get away with maybe like a 4 terabyte drive to turn in that stuff. For this Lionsgate list, you're going to need bigger than that. Again, the title and copyright reports say somewhere around $1,500. Hopefully you can get a little cheaper there. Something to think about too, if you are doing a SAG film, you're going to have to do a collection account. So there's 2 main companies out there. There's a couple more these days that have popped up. There's Vintage House and there's Freeway. And basically it's as simple as as it sounds. You basically, the money goes into the collection account and gets dispersed according to the agreements that you have of who gets what. So that kind of protects everybody. It helps you with the transparency that like you as the producer aren't getting the money and then you're just not paying people what they should be paid. So collection account does not typically have an upfront cost out of your pocket, but they do typically take around the first $5,000 that comes in, and then they take a percentage of everything that comes in. And that's where, and then SAG or the other unions, their residual set aside is going to come out next before your money. Now that's something to think about too, especially with international sales agents. They always want to fight with that. They don't want SAG sitting in front of their fee. So you just have to go into when you're negotiating those deals and up front and say, you have to sit behind my union residual set asides. Because if you don't do that up front and you sign their agreement with them, they're not going to agree later. And then you got SAG, you got Maureen telling you like, no, we can't sign this collection agreement because you've got international sales agents saying they're, not going to let us get our residuals for our members first, so just again, things to think about.
Andrew, if you're still there, you were asking about, should you put all of these in your production budget? And also, are there any clearances now for COVID compliance?
You should absolutely put all this stuff in your production budget. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, I would even, especially with small films, because again, just because you think you and your friends and family think you made a great film, it doesn't mean that a distributor is going to buy your film. And buy even means straight distribution deal and puts it out there. Or you may get terrible terms. The one thing I would think about with self-distribution is you are now a distributor. So for the next couple years of your life, you want to use a big chunk of your time marketing and distributing your film. That is the negative of self-distribution. people have done it, but the success stories that you're hearing, most of them, they're like going on the road and playing for colleges and different places, and they're shaking hands and kissing babies, and they become a distributor for their own film for like the first year especially, and you probably need to do it for 2. That's just the main thing I say. But there's also, you may be in a situation where you have the ability to spend a couple hours a day and push it on social media and things like that, or have a good network. And it may make the most sense. I'm just saying there is the downsides to think about. So for worst case, I would budget as much as you can, for distribution and marketing funds. And even if, say you do a deal with a small distributor and you say, hey, I've got 20 grand, I'd like to hire an outside publicist to work with you, they may be open for that, so it's just like things to think about. But if you have the ability to put another 20 to 50 grand, which again, sometimes I know that's a huge number, to put it in your budget. And even if you don't have it, it's not a bad thing to budget out a self-distribution. And there's a lot of good companies out there that do it. Some of them are actually more hands-on and can help consult you with marketing plans and things like that. So but even if you don't have the money, yes, I would absolutely budget for all this stuff. So that way, at least your investors knew you mentioned it to them in the beginning. You were transparent, you're open. And as I said, I just can't stress on across the board, like, again, you're working with SAG, you make a mistake, go to them and talk to them about it. Just being honest and transparent and open, is definitely, the way to do it. But I'm more of a, like, also take care of it in advance opposed to ask forgiveness later with most things, so try to do it the right way first. So yes, budget all this stuff, show it to your investors, be like, listen, we can get the movie done for this number, but this is the number that we should have to cover everything we really need.
Awesome. So last question, Joni is asking, and I think others are probably wondering, if you didn't produce the film yourself, how are you finding these films that you work as a sales agent with?
Mm-hmm. Well, for instance, I just had a film that I executive produced, Play Fantasia, which was a predominantly digital festival this year because of COVID. Oh, and I didn't cover the COVID releases.
Right.
Yes, there are things that you want to do. I mean, right now, again, and our SAG representative can talk more about it, that there are regulations in place where you have to do testing. And I think it's, and again, she can correct me because it's been a minute since I've looked at the latest, but I believe it's like you have to do 3 tests a week and things like that. So there are, again, independent film workarounds to where if you can't afford to have, like, say, those tests done on set 3 times a week, you're still going to have to have a COVID compliance officer on set. Now, that said, you can register and do that online yourself. So that may be a solution if you're in a small independent film. And then maybe your other solution to get the actual test done is to go to Walgreens or wherever the free testing is, but you've scheduled those appointments for your people that need to go in and get it done and things like that. But yes, definitely educate yourself on what the regulations are around COVID stuff these days. And I'm so to jump back to that last question, what was it? Because I just
About how do you find the films that you work as a sales
right.
agent?
So that's how I got on COVID. Yes. So, like, for instance, when they started announcing films, if you're like, oh, well, that film sounds interesting, they don't seem to have a sales agent, do your research and and then reach out and say, hey, do you have a representation? I'm interested in looking at your film and seeing if I can be helpful on the sales side. I don't do a lot of that. I did do a little bit of that with Fantasia just because I knew some of the filmmakers that had films. I said, hey, congratulations, you got your sales lined up. And then with the film that I'm selling now, I actually got through Panic Fest here in Kansas City. The guys there said this is a film, that didn't have any distribution or sales lined up, and that I should take a look at. So, or another filmmaker or somebody, like, if you've made a film and you've got Andrea's information, says, hey, can you help me with selling this? Andrea can send it to me. I typically get it more organically like that because I'm not necessarily a sales rep that's out selling a new movie every day. it's typically films that I produce or that just sort of organically come to me. But yeah, but I'm definitely interested in looking at stuff, but I'll just be candid and say that as far as like, low budget, non-union, no name actor kind of stuff, I'm probably not interested unless it is some sort of genre. Like when I say genre again, that horror, monster, sci-fi kind of thing. But you never know. I'm happy to look at it. Happy to look at anything.
Awesome. Thank you. I know we've gone a little longer. We usually do some networking and we're still going to do that, but I want to remind you to come back September 25th and we'll talk about SAG contracts and talk to Joni Tackett. Will talk with us about casting. We're excited about that. Thank you, Cole, for all of this information that you have shared. And I will share the 2 documents, the indie deliverables and the studio deliverables, with you guys that are attending. And we are going to go into some breakout rooms. If you don't want to do the networking part, you can check out. That's totally okay. We hope you'll come back. But if you are going to stay in the network, we're going to do about a 10-minute networking time in small groups. And I'm going to send you there right now. Okay.
All right. Thanks, guys.